Welcome to the Second Bite Podcast, where we talk with top entrepreneurs and CEOs about creating valuable companies through creative transactions. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome to the Second Bite Podcast. This is the Founder Question series, and today we're asking the question, when do I tell my entire company? How do I tell my customers? And when do we announce it to the public, the transaction that we've just done? It tends to create a lot of angst in founders. And I think the insight you get from these 6 or 7 past founders would be very helpful and insightful. Thanks to our sponsors at Fiscal Advocate, they create a tremendous dashboard for agencies so that they're running their business based on best practices and a real awareness of your financials. So thanks to the folks at Fiscal Advocate, and enjoy this episode.
John, when you did your transaction, you sold a quad, you guys made an announcement. What was your experience like with that? And what wisdom could you pass on for how do you announce it to your employees, your customers, and then to the world at large?
So once again, it's an answer that is gray and is different based on each company. In our scenario, it was a very easy story to tell because the only major difference was that we now had a board that I had to report into, and that we were going to get a lot more resources from Quad across, spectrum. Quad, when they acquire a company, basically has a philosophy of do no wrong. And so the last thing they want to do is integrate too quickly or somehow screw up the big investment that they just made. And so they left us alone. In fact, today's April 9th, like a week ago, they just changed the logo from Rise Interactive to just Rise. And now it says Rise, a Quad company. So it's been 4 years and 9 days, not that I'm counting, since I stepped down as CEO. And so for 4 years, they've done some integrations and they've done slow, but they've done a really good job of leaving the company alone. So I don't think it felt much different for a very long time at the company. Other companies, by the way, might integrate much faster. And so you have to have a different story and a different announcement, depending on that.
Were you worried about telling customers particularly about the transaction, and what kind of reaction did you get?
So I wasn't worried about it at all. And once again, part of it was the brand was staying the same. The team was staying the same. Other than I think they had to sign a new legal agreement. I think I probably was a little bit nervous about whenever someone has to sign a new legal agreement, that scares me. But I had very little fear in that regard. The other part is our acquirer has an amazing reputation. So they work with a lot of the clients that we were working with, except they were managing the printing. So if anything, it just deepened the relationship of now we got you for digital marketing and we have printing under one house. So it was a very smooth, easy conversation.
Great. John Morris, thank you for sharing. Matt, one question always comes up, and I think is the cause of a lot of concern or trepidation. When do I announce the transaction? When do I tell my clients, and how do I tell my clients, and how do we shape a public message? What was that like for you?
A lot of stress, because you don't know, right? Especially when it's your first time. We've since made an acquisition, as you mentioned earlier, and I kind of had a little bit of confidence on, here's how we're going to tell clients, and here's how we're going to do it. But when it's your first time, you don't want to mess anything up. And there are customer calls that happen as when you get to the end of the deal or right before closing, there are customers. So at some point you do have to let your customers know. So I reached out individually to our very best customers. I picked up the phone and called them, got on a Teams call or a Zoom call shared with them my vision, shared with them the why. Every single client was excited for us. Every client was happy. But I think your best clients, you do it one-on-one, individually, with a phone call or a Teams meeting or an in-person, depending on your relationship. And then the other big significant thing is clients have to know, all your clients need to know before it hits social media, before a press release goes out. You want your clients, when they see it in social media, you want them to say, oh yeah, I had heard about that. Matt told me, or so-and-so told me about that. You want them in the loop.
Did you call your client, because private equity, or who, in your case, private equity, but whoever the buyer is going to do customer calls. Did you reach out individually to your top customers before they made those calls?
I set up the calls just to make, so I called and said, hey, just so you know, you're going to be getting a call from so-and-so, and they're going to ask you a bunch of questions of what it's like to do business with us. And so I knew who was available and who wasn't. So I gave that list, because honestly, I don't think our clients would have taken the call.
Yeah, and you use that as the impetus to say, hey, we've got great news, here's what's going on.
Absolutely. And again, the response from our clients was, oh, fantastic, good for you. That's a smart move for your company.
And was that what you expected? I know you weren't surprised by it, but that was the part that created the stress?
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. You know, we have a 40-year-old company, and a lot of people have emotional attachments to the company. And, bringing in a partner, an investor, private equity, that they don't know who that person is. I was way more concerned than they were.
Good to hear. Thanks for sharing that. So when you did your transaction with Rivet Logic, what is the best way to announce the transaction to your customers and to the market in general, and maybe to the entire employee base?
Yeah. So from a customer perspective, some of them are probably going to find out during the due diligence process, because the acquirer is going to want to talk to your largest customers, your strategic customers. You may have agreements, clauses in your agreements about change of control. So you'll need to address that before the acquisition. And you want to do that prepare for that process. And then upon acquisition, for everybody else, including the rest of the employees, as you mentioned, I would also put in business partners. You may have resellers or solution integrators and vendor relationships. This is something you really need to think about during your process, during that due diligence phase, when you got some spare time. Prepare prior to close on how you're going to communicate it to all your stakeholders, customers, employees, and everyone in between.
And the buyer has a lot of feedback. The buyer wants it to go well also, correct?
Absolutely. Yep. That's customer relationships are a key part of what they are acquiring. So it needs to be, you need to prepare well, and then you need to do it immediately upon the close. So you got to have the communication channels established. You got to have your personnel. Again, this goes back to the other question we talked about in the other episode about timing and communicating to your team. You need to prepare your team, and especially those that are customer facing, to deliver that message and do that effectively, do it consistently. That's probably the most important thing here, is the internal coordination that you need to take into account, ensure that everyone's communicating the same message, and that you don't have confusion unnecessarily.
And were you surprised at all by your client's response to you telling him about the transaction?
No, I think we had an overall positive response. In our case, the people weren't changing. The ownership was changing, but the people, the relationships, the service was not changing in any in most cases, really across the board, with a larger owner with more resources, the quality of service, the expanded range of services Rivologic would be able to offer post acquisition was all a positive. So it went well.
Great feedback, Mike. Thank you.
You bet.
Lance, as somebody that has exited a few times now, what's the best way to announce a transaction? And what were your biggest concerns around how that was handled?
This was actually my biggest concern when I was exiting my last agency, only because you often have to give clients as references before the deal closes. So now you have somebody calling your client saying, hi, we're planning on buying X, Y, and Z. How do you feel about your current agency? So having that conversation with your client before you close a deal, I was very concerned. And then after I had the one-on-one calls before the references, because I made sure they were okay with it, I was unbelievably relieved. And it was actually not an issue. They were so supportive, helpful, behind it 100%. And it was one of those things where I didn't know what I didn't know. And if you have the right relationships and you explain it in a way that everyone's going to a better place, it works out pretty nicely.
And I guess that's part of why you would be doing the transaction in the first place, right? Because you have more stability, more service offering, deeper talent pool, all those kind of things.
Exactly.
Did you spend a lot of time on those calls talking about that?
We did. I mean, we were, not the biggest agency in the world, but we had some of the largest Fortune 500s. And the opportunity to grow with those clients is, green fields. And if you have more capabilities and you can have a bigger conversation, whether that be web development, marketing, media, strategy, whatever it might be, it's a win for everybody. And presented that way, it works. Some of the smaller clients might be concerned as well, but it depends on the transaction. It depends on what your role is going to be going forward, your management team. And typically when you close a deal, the first 60, 90, even the first year, often not that much changes, especially in the first 90 days. Everybody just wants to get to know each other. You're merging the back end of the companies before the front end of the companies, so to speak, as it relates to systems, financials, things like that. And that's the priority. So the client work often doesn't even change resources.
Very helpful, Lance. Thank you. Aaron, one of the things I hear a lot is that people are concerned about telling the entire team, but more importantly, telling customers and what the reaction will be like and how do you announce it. Now, you've been through this twice, both with private equity. Can you comment on what that was like and maybe how it was different at the second transaction versus the first?
Yeah. So whereas I think that you want your management team to be more in the loop of what's going on if you're exploring a sales process, I don't think that the same holds true for your general organization. Because, and if you've been through a deal process, you understand there are some highs and lows where you think this deal is definitely going through and you're in love and it's going to close next week. And then there's, the lawyer, sent through red lines and now we're like 4 weeks out. And so to be kind of on the front lines at an organization and have to hear about that drama every day and not have control over it, it just drives a lot of uncertainty across the business, which I don't think is good. And so I've always communicated to the team that, yes, they know that we are always exploring a sales process, that I will let them know when there is something concrete to know. And I think that I've kept my word on that across the years. And I think that's the best way to go. When there's something concrete to know, turns out to be when the money actually gets wired, I would say, for the general team. So like the deal is actually done. And then you announce pretty quickly. With both internal teams and with clients, the biggest thing that you have to get in front of is fear. Humans naturally fear change. And while you're excited about it and you got to know the new buyers and you built this great growth plan, everybody else didn't have a front row seat to that. And so you really have to be thoughtful about your messaging and get in front of it first and foremost with your team. But once your team knows, you pretty rapidly have to have customer communication available too, because your best intentioned employee could have a great relationship with a client and just happen to mention it. And now the news is out before you got to get it out there. So as you get certainty that the deal is going to close, you want to start working on your internal communications and your external communications. And from a fear perspective, if you are involved in payments or if, there's something around being able to deliver, like you want to get it off the table that nobody should expect a delay in delivery, a delay in payments, any of those things. And to the extent that you can, the management team's still here, your team is still here, all of those pieces, and then be able to follow up with, and here's why we did this deal, because we're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z better for you. And this is why this was well positioned.
And typically you'll have to reach out to some customers before you actually close.
Yep.
How was that different, and was that nerve-wracking, or any insight you would offer there?
Yeah. Well, from our perspective, we typically like to put that as far at the end of a process as possible, because you want high certainty that you're going to close, and you want to know that the folks talking to those customers have an appreciation for the customers and for your space. We have always framed it for customers that we're exploring strategic partnerships, which is the case, and that we want their help in understanding how we could continue what they like about our services, what we could do to make our services better is how we've usually framed it. I would say we have sold to PE. In the event that you're exploring selling to a strategic, then I think you want to be even more close to the vest in terms of customer list, because if that sale doesn't go through, now you've introduced your customers to a potential competitor.
Right. Aaron, thank you.
Yeah.
So, Peter, one of the big concerns that I hear is when and how do we announce this? Particularly right before you get to close, you've got to tell a few or a handful of important clients that you're going to do a transaction. What was that like for you, telling clients, and how did you decide to announce the transaction to your team, the broad team, and then to the market in general?
Yeah, the client side gives you a little bit of angst at first, but then as you get rolling through it, it's really not that bad for us. And I'll take you through both sides of it, from us as a platform and then us as we were working with our
That'd be great.
Acquiring. On the platform side, it's really easy. You go to a client who's hopefully is happy with you already, and you say, look, we're going to take some private equity money in. Nothing's going to change. Management's staying in place. We're basically just bringing shareholders in. We wouldn't even have to announce this to anybody because nothing's going to really change. It does give us some more money to invest in technology. So we think that that's going to help you as we get better and better at what we do. But you're not going to see any changes on your side. And we're still 100% committed. I'm continuing to run the business. I still own a large chunk in the company. The management team's incentivized. So you shouldn't see any change, but wanted to let you know. So those went really smoothly. On the side where we were doing acquisitions and we knew that those companies were going to kind of fold in, the strategy was a little bit more of letting the clients know, hey, look, no major changes. Your account team's staying the same. We're not going to have any layoffs. Everyone's staying with the company. We're going to be part of a bigger group now. And here's the resources they bring. And we didn't really have any duplication. We bought some digital groups. We weren't really doing digital. So we had some more offerings for them. They would have radio, television, other things that those groups didn't bring. So we really tried to show the positives to the clients and let them know why we were doing it. And we really didn't get any pushback. I think there was more internal angst to letting people know and more worry than there needed to be. It was not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
How did you handle when you did the acquisitions that you did? How did you handle the name of the company you acquired in Barrington, and how did you think through that?
Yeah, so at first we really did a multi-step approach to it. We let them keep their name at first. We opened up bank accounts under their name so that there wouldn't be any major disruptions. We had a much bigger finance and accounting systems, and a lot of the groups that we bought were smaller, and so they didn't have those resources anyway. So they were actually pretty happy that we were taking over some of the work that they didn't want to focus on. we then started putting onto the website, XYZ, a Barrington Media Group company. And then we went through a process internally. Once we had done, I think it was either 3 or 4 acquisitions, we started going through a process, including everybody, to say, hey, let's come up with a name together. Obviously, we're not going to do this every time we acquire people, so this will be, a one-time thing. And we shortened the name down to, and we let our employees vote and pick, and it was a fun process to go through. And so we did a rebrand under BMG 360, but that was including, all the acquisitions, and it came in from the team. So our internal teams worked on the logos and the colors and the whole purpose behind it. And I think because we made it fun and inclusive, it went well.
And you get combined ownership in who the new company is, right? Buy-in.
That's right.
Great feedback, Peter. Thank you. Lindsay, Fred, when you guys did a great transaction, you and Dan.
Mm-hmm.
How did you think about the release to everybody? How did you think about keeping the name Demand Drive?
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, there's a moment in time when you tell your best customers, right, before the deal actually closes.
Yep.
How concerned were you about that, and what was that like? If you can cover those, please.
Yeah, absolutely. No, these are all great questions. So I think as far as the name piece of it, when Dan and I went through the transaction, we were the platform company. So we were the first one, which was kind of exciting for me. I think branding and a company's name, it really is a big piece of your identity. So, TBD on where the Demand Drive name, what happens at the end of the day, or what we're going to do there now that we've done a couple acquisitions. But, it was helpful that we obviously kept the brand, we kept the name. That provided a lot of continuity, especially to your point, when we told clients. So we had, when did we tell them? So it was pretty early on, right?
It's a requirement. I'm sorry to step on you, but it's a requirement of the buyer before you get to close that they want to check with some customer.
Yes, I was just going to bring that up. So they actually interviewed several clients, and they actually did kind of a survey of our client base just to kind of understand client satisfaction, what areas are clients looking for that maybe services that we don't provide. It's very vague. They're not saying, hey, we are a private equity firm that is thinking in investing and buying this company. It's more like we're doing some management consulting. And so at that juncture, unless a client has their, ears perked up to that type of, experience, I don't think that would have tipped them off per se. But yes, that absolutely does happen, like kind of far into the diligence process. But when we actually told our clients, I have a pretty, close relationship with a lot of our clients. So in some cases, I just called them up and let them know what was going on. And in some cases, I had already told some of our clients and people that I'm close to what was happening. And
they were nervous about the reaction?
Honestly, no. I don't know. Do people say yes? I wasn't. We didn't get any pushback. We didn't have any clients say, oh, we're out. Our business is a services company, a sales and marketing agency. So we work very tightly with our clients as an extension of their team. So, they just wanted to make sure, are any people changing? And I, allayed fears. And I just said, hey, operational, this is why Dan and I did this, is we brought in this great partner. They are going to execute on M&A and offer strategic insight and help us grow. But we are going to continue to operationally run the business. And so clients were honestly really excited and happy. And then we posted it on LinkedIn, and there was really an outpouring of just, hey, congratulations, well-deserved, really happy for you, how exciting. And honestly, it kind of it really piqued some interest, and I had some people reach out that were prior clients and that was a nice catalyst to be like, actually, great, thanks for reaching back out. So what's going on the sales and marketing team? So it was nice. For us, it was a good experience.
Excellent. Lindsay, Frey, great insights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew, question. You've got to announce this to your broader team, to the
Mhm.
marketplace, to all of your customers. How did you think about structuring that? And then before that, I know as you go through due diligence, the buyer wants to talk to your top customers.
Mhm.
So question number one would be, how did you communicate with those top customers first before the transaction had finalized? And how nervous were you about that?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't nervous because we have great relationships with our clients, and the approach that they took was more surveys with specifically designed questions. So we basically reached out to all of our customers and said, "Build this out." Honestly, we're trying to get feedback to help make the business better and improve our offering, which was great for us to get that data regardless. So
that was not a verbal phone call. It was data that they completed online?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
So that made it pretty easy. Once we did the transaction, I really wrote an email to each of the key people, telling them how exciting it was. We have more size and scale, which I think a lot of our clients that we had in place looked at that as a positive. Whenever your organization is growing and has more financial backing, it creates more stability, more areas to add new services. So there was no client, like literally, that had any questions or concerns. They just wanted to make sure I was still there.
Right. How did you announce it to the broader market or the community and your team? And how did you manage the timing of that?
Yeah, I think the first thing we did, as I mentioned in a previous question, was tell our management team. And it was all about getting them excited about the opportunity. And they were going to be the advocates and the influencers of our staff during the process. And like I said, we felt great about it. We made our managers feel great about it. So we had a group call where we told everybody collectively at the agency about it. And I spoke really from a place of authenticity of how I felt about it. And then a lot of our managers would jump in and talk about how it's a great thing. So there was other people in the process also really telling the story of the why and the how and the what and the where. And I think that it was helpful. So they heard from all of us. They saw the excitement. They saw other people that they trusted really with buy-in. And I think that made it really go down easy, so to speak. Listen, like in an organization, you're going to have all different types of personalities. Some don't deal well with change. Some are just naturally have more anxiety. So you're going to get all the different personality types. So I think that we open lines of communication. So if you do have questions, you do have concerns, reach out. And I think the manager spoke to everybody individually. There was a couple questions and concerns that are totally normal. Like, how are we going to change? Or is corporate policy going to be different? Is the culture going to be different? But then within like a couple of weeks, they're like, oh, wait, it's the same thing.
Same people, same thing, right?
Same people, same thing, same managers. And I think people kind of settled down a little bit about that. But honestly, it wasn't too much of an issue at all. I think that the transition went extremely well with staff. And within a couple of weeks to a month, didn't even feel like we did something. But now they're meeting new people from a new organization that are happy to meet them and excited. And it felt like a step forward for them. So that's sort of at least my perception of how it went down, but I think it's pretty accurate.
Excellent. Andrew, thank you for those comments.
Yeah, no worries.
Kevin Biani from Sproutward. When and how did you guys think about announcing the transaction? First, I guess you announced it to a few customers before it gets announced to the broader public. And then what was the process you guys went through when you announced it, the deal to the public, if you will?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, we were really excited to announce it because of just really the value that we were creating. Part of the reason why we did the deal was we knew this would greatly expand our capabilities and our reach. So I think the first thing is we've built really great relationships with our clients. So we did go to a lot of our key clients ahead of time, make sure they understand why we're doing this, what the benefits are, and how this will impact. I remember the leadership team at Power Digital was also very important of like, we want to make sure the clients feel like this is win-win. And they were very much on board. Like, we want to overwhelm them with like the value that's going to be delivered. And I think that was one of the things that was really critically important to be able to do. And then I think as we brought it more widely open to the street, we wanted to, again, really showcase that how this is also a business development opportunity for us. Like, it is both maintaining that client relationship, but then it's like, we have all these new capabilities that are going to be really beneficial. So we wanted to make sure we did it in a smart way, in a positive way.
Were you nervous about telling your customers and how they would react?
There's always a little bit of nervous because nobody likes the change out the gate. But I think because we saw that part of the reason why we were doing this was to expand our capabilities and really be strong. I think across the board, they more saw it as a positive. There's always a few that get nervous, and they get nervous about, is it going to be more expensive because you're part of a bigger firm? Am I going to lose my team that I have that I like? Things like that. And I think we try to mitigate that as much as possible, and just really, again, make sure we're showing the value that's being created versus people thinking about fees and team.
I would imagine the fact that you and Scott and Annabella were staying on board went a long way towards making people comfortable.
100%. I mean, I think that was a question that we'd get all the time, is like, are you out of here? And it was really much more about, no, this is about growth and moving this forward, and less about us making an exit.
Excellent. Kevin Biondi from Sproutward, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Second Bite podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.